All right, so we are live on Facebook Live. Thanks for bearing with me through this process. I have had a bunch of technical issues trying to get this presentation uploaded and taken care of. I tried to record it. I tried to do some scripting. I've tried a lot of different methods, but it just hasn't worked yet. So I'm going to use some notes here. I usually don't use notes in a talk. But I wanted to use notes on this one because the content that we're talking about is a little bit intense, and so I don't want to do any free association with it. So basically, what happened is one day I was reading, like this weekend, I was reading Jakob Boehme, in specific, a chapter out of one of his readings called Earthly and Heavenly Mystery and the Image of the Soul. And what I read was this was the part, among others, that just leaped out at me, and I'll quote it here. It says, and thus we were able to recognize an eternal substantiality in nature, identical with water and fire, which as it were mixed together, where this then gives a light blue color, like the flash of fire, where it hath a form as a ruby mixed with crystal in one substance, or as yellow, white, red, and blue mingled in dark water, where it is as blue and green, yet each has its luster and shines. So the reason why this was so amazing to me was because I had never seen Jakob Boehme talk about the colors of mysticism. This is a very difficult topic to get any information on. And through some teachings I have learned throughout my 20 years of studying the occult and esotericism, I learned a lot about colors and vibrational frequencies and stuff. So this jumped out at me. Not only did it have reference to, like I was seeing, the Vajrayana, who anybody that knows anything about the Tibetan Book of the Dead can easily see that those colors have reference to the bardos, similarities, I would say, and other occult truths. So what I wanted to do was eventually do a presentation on what I found there and go through the different Steiner eurythmies, the levels of color mysticism through some chromo color stuff, and also eventually going to Bienza Diono, who was Ivanhov's teacher, who talked about colors in the New Testament. Now, this is something that is really, really esoteric and pretty advanced, but you'll hear about it even in the most rudimentary occult teaching. You'll learn about the rays of color, how they corresponded in the past with certain tarot cards or certain notes on the piano, and that they have a certain mathematical precision to them. And the way I learned it was also that they have Kabbalistic correspondences and vibrational correspondences. They can relate to chakras, on and on and on. So the colors are manifestations of a lot of these symbol sets, is what we call them. Now, what happened is later on in that day, I was browsing through Facebook, and I saw a friend's image, and I saw this, and I was like, wow, that is an amazing image. And I thought, the image, as great as it is, it's not doing justice to the ideas that are embedded in it. And I thought, well, maybe I should color it. Because I'm recently been doing Photoshop coloring, and not too bad, I didn't finish this one completely, but this is what I came about with. And after I colored this, I thought, not only do I want to put this into book form or something like a presentation, but I need to tell people about this. And so what happened is, as I've been reading Boehme, and as I understood this Demiurge, this new level of gnosis just kind of popped out, that tied everything together. like in Big Lebowski, it ties the room together. And this ties the esoteric tradition together pretty well. And I'll go through it. So the first thing you could probably see is around the lion's head, there's colors. These are the colors that came up to me in Boehme, and the color mysticism, which I was just talking about. And also, I wanted to put the colors of the Bardo in there, to show that this was interchangeable with Paracelsian alchemy and what he called the four lights. The lights of the mystic are available, but rarely talked about. So those are there, as you can see them, the Paracelsian, what were called Iliasters. And then also you see the dragon-headed lion. Those colors from the lion's mane and face are actual lion colors. I used real images of lions in high definition and snagged those colors because I wanted the lion to be as real as possible to nature. The green serpent should represent the envious nature of the serpentine energy. As I was learning it through Boehme, there's other things that he talks about, of course. I mean, he's a very prolific writer in his time, and he wrote about some pretty amazing stuff. But Boehme, he was very specific about the fallen nature of mankind, humankind, and how this was like a covetousness of the divine powers. So I thought, what would be better than green? And then to put it as a two-toned color to show its dualistic nature. And you'll start seeing more and more of the Gnostic myth coming through, because this is exactly what was hidden from people, and then eventually the alchemists put into symbolic form, but didn't have any explanations. Or they had explanations but no pictures. Or the Gnostics, they used metaphor and allegory of the biblical texts to try to share these things. So what happened is, wisdom in the Gnostic Aeonology is a profound aeon who decides, I don't need, similar to the serpent, I don't need a counterpart to help me do the things I want to do. Mainly, which is make a being which will pay homage and be reverent toward me. So what happened was Sophia wisdom split through that desire and became Sophia Akmoth. You'll see this a lot in Gnostic literature, which it isn't really explained what happened. It takes a while to understand how the split happened. When the desire to be an individual, and I'm not talking bad about anybody's philosophy, anybody's viewpoints, and anything like that. This has no other correlation than Gnostic Hermetic philosophy. I am, as you see here, it says chem clothing. I am fully a Kemetic philosopher or Hermetic philosopher. So I will go back to first principles before everything and try to work my way to modernity through these ancient ways of understanding. And they are ancient. But first, Sophia splits, and there's a portion of Sophia that stays, wisdom, stays in the place where she was already emanated from in the supernals. This is regular Kabbalah. But what they don't teach you is that when the split happens, then a creator was formed, a judge, a demiurge. This is very important to realize, because the demiurge is the being responsible for creation. So the demiurge has a lot of pull when it comes to say, I am the only God that exists. Well, in its creative universe, it is the only God that exists. It's the only force that has to be reconciled. It is the, beginning and the end. So when I saw this, I wanted to talk about the Demiurge, but I didn't quite know where we were going to go with it. But I wanted to share this image. So you can see him in the dualistic waters of creation and the red and bluish pastel colors. He's almost trying to dualize the lights, which are unified, the sun and the moon, but they are one of a dualistic whole. The moon is a reflection of the light that comes from the sun, and the sun is an ever fire, ever burning presence, on and on and on. You can read this stuff in your literature. It transfers through all, and there's been a lot of sun worship through the ages. But what the Demiurge wants to do is take away the view of the sun as being a holistic principle and turns it into a duality of matter and not really spirit, but matter and more matter. And what you can see is in the East, where the sun is known to be in a lot of traditions, it shines, but as the dualistic being comes closer to the unified source, it becomes purified. So you'll see I colored on the side of the serpent, the gold of the philosopher's stone is colored on the serpent because he's touching the sun. He's got close enough to the sun in the east, and that sun is purifying his duality. The same with the moon, which is reflected on its side of the sun. You can clearly see that light comes from the reflection of the sun. And on the beast, the dualistic beast, you see that the moon is coloring the beast's tail. So the gold and the silver are both coming in and showing the unity within the being of these lights. So I thought this would be great for multiplicity and unity. So after that, we also have Sabayot, or Eonology, which is I am the Demiurge, I am the only God that exists, there is no other before me. And the reason why, what fallen Sophia said was, Saklas, S-A-K-L-A-S, you are a liar, you know that you come from, the supernal, you know that you come from this unified source. And Saklas has the desire of Sophia's fallen self, which was desirous to create a being that only worshipped her. And so it similarly has a reflection of that attitude, that I'm the only one that exists. There's no other before me. There's no greater than me. Okay, so the way it does this is through discursive, conceptual information, through thinking, through using the mind. So I colored around Sabayot, which was not colored for a reason. I wanted the logos, the word, to be completely divine. That was the part where it could not get to, because what I wanted to do was color shins, the Hebrew letter shin, all around Eonology, but I couldn't get Photoshop to act right. So around the Eonology, there's 7 rays. There's 7 planetary powers of what Eonology uses to be able to affect nature with the plan of the Demiurge. So in Boehme, the Demiurge becomes connected to these actual forces, and these forces become connected to the human being. So there's more and more to go over it, but this is really instructive, because when you learn about Giktel and the Giktelian diagrams of Boehme's science and philosophy, you can see this kind of clicking together. That Boehme was a Valentinian, and he was teaching Aeonology, and he was teaching these high levels of Gnostic truth, but nobody could perceive it. And it's because it was a hidden tradition. However, as these forces go off into the noosphere, which is around his logoic expression, you can see that they are darkening the mind energy, which is supposed to be the heliotrope energy. What I didn't realize until I started coloring the image was that Saturn actually doesn't have a crossbar. If you look at this image, even in the original, because I thought maybe it was the rendering that I did with my version and that Saturn did have a crossbar and I lost it, and you'll see in the original there is no crossbar. So I was like, wow, this is saying that for a reason. The Demiurge doesn't recognize and can't recognize a cross because the cross brings about the rite of sacrifice. The rite of sacrifice, or as it's known in popular parlance, is the Eucharist. So what happens at the point of the Eucharist is duality is transcended. The wine and the bread is transcended into a form of spiritual on and on and on. But the Demiurge cannot acknowledge the cross. So its only memory in its deep unconscious, you see in the dark mirror, when it looks into itself, it can't see the logoic sacrifice. It can only see Saturn, but it doesn't see the crossbar in Saturn. Because were it to see a cross, it would realize that it is lying. Just like Sophia Wisdom says, you do have a source that's beyond your own faculties. So when I saw that, I was amazed because that brought me back to Gunonian science, Rene Gunon, and how he talks about the cross being the place where modernity and antiquity kind of change, and that through the X and Y axis, the self and everything, and there's a lot of information that goes behind it. But I realized that there was no crossbar and it was intentional. So this mirror, this black mirror that the Demiurge comes out of, also showed me that this was not something that it did on its own. See, when the powers of the rays of the Demiurge affected the human being, the Demiurge was evoked at the same time using that metaphysical constant. So in Gichtel's diagram, Saturn is at the crown area up here above the third eye. You have the crown. That was good, huh? Chem clothing, third eye. You have the crown above, and at the crown area in Gichtel's diagram, you see Saturn, and that has a crossbar. And what I noticed is that even though the human being has always been given a Saturnian area that they can get gnosis from, the Demiurge has completely eliminated the crossbar in the Saturnian core of its being because it doesn't want to ever acknowledge non-existence, which is what Saturn is non-existence. So this is a simulacrum of the actual Saturnian force. So we have that, and it's very important to realize this because the higher metaphysics of Gnosticism rely on this. This is the first time I got this lecture out. The light that it gets close to, that it was acting on its own will, but it's a golem. So this golem, and this is important to realize, that the elemental projected from the human being that has been affected with the 7 rays of the planetary materiality does not have the ability to control the being that emanates from it. So it emanates this elemental who then who then proclaims, I am the only God that there is. I am the only source of all creation. And so what it does is it denies its own source, and it becomes a tool in the use of the source that it comes from. This is what Boehme calls the wrath of God. The fiery wrath that happens from the misuse of the powers that are given to the human being now turn on the individual and they become the force that redeems the soul out of matter, out of individualism. And the Aeon now is at the service, unbeknownst to itself, of the eternal emanative source. When I saw that, I realized, oh my God, we punish ourselves with these elementals that come out of us by the misuse of the law that establishes all these dynamics, these metaphysical constants. And then it dawned on me while coloring, oh my God, this Demiurge is in a Vesica Pisces. The Vesica Pisces in geometry happens from the overlapping of 3 circles. There's 2 on the side and there's 1 in the middle, and the Vesica is the overlapping area of all 3 circles that you can see you can see through the veil of the triplicity, or what are actually called hypostases in Gnostic Aeonology, and you can see in this particular area. This is creation. This is what the Demiurge made. This is the wrath of God. This is the triplicity of the universe, the outer limits when it comes to Godhead and the source and Kabbalistic, on and on and on. So I wanted to color the dark mirror in 3 shades of dark, showing the Ein Sof Or of the Kabbalah. They say that the Klipot are inverted Kabbalistic trees. So you see at the bottom of the Demiurge's ground is the darkness, and at the top is the light, where in Kabbalah the top is the most dark and unknown place that you can fathom, and is a limit that you can't go past. The intellectual capacity cannot go past. The image of the human being, on and on and on, can go there, but not the human being and their material self. So I wanted to put that in the color too. And so all these things came leaping out at me when I colored this image, and by their fruits you shall know them. So I think I finally got this recorded. I'm so happy. I hope that you'll enjoy it and subscribe to the channel. Come check out my merch, Kim Clothing. And thank you for watching. Bye.